Mr. James Carstensen is in studio, Republican candidate for the Caddo Commission. Welcome back to Keel. How you doing this morning?
I'm doing great. Thanks.
You
for
felt
having me.
compelled. You felt compelled to join us today.
Yes, sir.
What is the genesis of this compulsion?
Well, about this time yesterday morning, I heard some interesting statements made on the radio, and I immediately decided to brainstorm on it, and I couldn't help
Give us a
myself.
little
and I texted
background.
Aaron.
What's this is in reference to the Chris David residency challenge, which a judge found, bluntly speaking, for Mr. David, right? What was the motivation? What were you thinking about that? What was the purpose of that?
Of the actual challenge?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it had complete basis according to the law. He voted in District 8 for mayor last year. As far as most of the attorneys and everyone I spoke to, it was very clear cut that was one of the key determining factors according to law. There's only 4 or 5 that they really use to determine how you establish domicile. You can have as many residences as you want. He can own 12 properties like he does, and say he lives wherever, but he can only pick one to domicile.
But I think the way you phrased it to Aaron yesterday, correct me if I'm wrong, I accept the judge's decision.
Right.
All's good. Let's move forward. Let's campaign. May the best man win.
Absolutely.
And then you heard what you heard yesterday.
Then I heard what I heard yesterday.
You got that soundbite ready? This is Mr. David's attorney, Alan Seabaugh, and referring to that case, that challenge, he said the following.
The one that was troubling was James Carstensen actually signed an affidavit attesting that he had personal knowledge that Chris was living at an address which is actually Chris's parents' house, which he's never lived at. Mm-hmm. He signed an affidavit saying he had personal knowledge of this, which is an under oath sworn statement. When I asked him on the stand where that came from, he said he read it on John Settle's blog. To be perfectly honest, James Carstensen committed perjury. Well, by signing the affidavit, that was an under oath statement, which was untrue, and he also perjured himself on the stand.
Okay, you committed perjury on the stand. Your response?
Absolutely not. It was a reach in the courtroom. It was a great defense. Ultimately, it worked, but absolutely not perjury. I had very credible sources who spoke directly with the wife, who as of on Thursday intended, before I decided to file the challenge, that she in fact said that he did not live in that house and where the kids had been being brought. She later changed her mind and didn't want to be subpoenaed, and so I chose not to, but I had already filed it, so we had to go with the evidence at hand. Mm-hmm. At the end of the day, we walked into the courtroom. The judge had to make a judgment call, even with all of the evidence citing, driver's license, still in District 8, vehicle registration, voter registration, which was only changed a couple of weeks before.
So your message to him is he needs to handle his business. Mr. David.
Absolutely.
Take care of your personal business and change your driver's license,
You're
etc.
asking the citizens of District 4 to elect you to be a legislator for the parish when you don't even know the most simplest things like updating your driver's license when you move, your vehicle registration, your homestead exemption, your voter registration. I mean, these things are actually required by law, the same law.
Was the basis of your challenge to Mr. David's residency? Was it, as they said in here in studio yesterday, was it a John Settle blog at his website?
Absolutely not. I mean, in full truth, John Settle was trying to fish me for information because he knew that other people had given me information. John Settle did give me some information, but it was before he released the article. So I was already trying to validate the information that I was finding out. And like I said, I had mutual friends, very trusted friends, who reached out to the wife.
If you could go back a couple of weeks, a month or so, knowing what you know now, knowing what you knew then, would you do it again? Would you challenge again?
Absolutely.
Okay. I live in this district, in Caddo Parish, in Shreveport. I want to be sure that we have a representative that represents me on the Caddo Commission and people that are like me. I want to ask you a few questions with regard to what kind of Caddo Commissioner you will be. Will you participate in the Caddo Parish retirement program?
No.
Absolutely not.
No, I don't believe it's allowed by the charter.
Okay. What will you do to reverse course with regard to what we have done, the boondoggle, with regard to the General Motors plant?
If there's a way, if there is an exit strategy, to get rid of that. I would prefer to sell it. I wasn't exactly in support of buying it. I know the argument was several years ago. I mean, I believe I was in one of the meetings where they argued that it's instantaneous money. The guy says there's $8 million worth of scrap in here. We're going to make money if we buy it for 7.5. There's no way the parish can lose, and you're going to make much more than the 1% interest that they could typically make. I wasn't really in support then. So any exit strategy that gets us out from underneath a situation like that, and obviously better legislation that's more complete going forward in the future to make sure that we have clear-cut criteria before we enter into any type of situation like that with taxpayer dollars.
NGOs, non-governmental organizations. Do you support funding them, and to what extent?
My extent will probably be rather low, but I am a very strict constitutional conservative, so I believe in a very limited government, and where the role should be. However, I do have a pragmatic side of me enough to understand that there are certain things they can do. I mean, there's already money allocated, so we have to look and find some things. I would prefer that we have, again, better legislation, clear-cut criteria, these things that are going to show that we have an actual positive return on investment, and that we're not just doling out money to a bunch of shell organizations for friends of friends of friends like we've seen my entire life, and I'm sure it was happening well before then.